Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Clocked In with the Press, hosted at Altman Studios in Brentwood, California. In this podcast, we highlight news stories, individuals, and organizations that deserve your attention. For full news stories and to stay updated on the latest Contra Costa County happenings, you can visit our website and Facebook at thepress.net or Twitter and Instagram at PressClockedIn. This is your host, Caitlin Gleason, clocking in. Today, we get to talk with Liberty Union High School District Superintendent Eric Volta and get his opinion on recent school events and changes. So, Eric, thank you for coming onto the show.
You're very welcome. This is my first podcast. I'm excited.
I'm very glad that we get to have this experience with you.
Thanks.
So first up, I would like to ask you a little bit about Freedom High School, because they did have a new theater that was built late last year. Tell me kind of a little bit about that development.
Well, it opened up actually earlier this year.
Oh.
It's been part of our 2016 Measure U bond program. We saw a number of improvements on the east side of the Liberty campus with bleachers, weight room, pool, maintenance and operations area, actually a concrete pathway to the stadium for the school instead of students having to walk around. That was the first part of this project. And then we also saw the building of a culinary arts building at Heritage. And now we've shifted from the back of Liberty to the front. We can talk about that later. But the theater was the first bond construction project that we've had at Freedom High School. And one of the goals that we had with Measure U was to have equal facilities across our district. And we had a nice theater at Heritage. We had a performing arts center at Liberty, and we had a multi-purpose room at Freedom. And so we knew that in order to have equal facilities for our performing arts students, we needed to have a theater, a place where students could showcase their talents at Freedom. And along with that, we added a theater arts classroom as well as a choral classroom. And we actually, the way that it was designed, we created a performing arts plaza with in between the theater and the school. True story, like all my stories, when we were meeting with the architects with some of the earlier bond projects, we said we're looking for the function of the building, not necessarily getting fancy, for lack of a better word, with the pool, or with the pool dressing rooms, or the mechanics rooms, or the stadium, or culinary arts. We just wanted to fit in with the schools.
Function over fun.
Exactly. When we started on the theater project, we told them that they could get a little artistic with this one, and they did. It's a beautiful facility.
That's actually really awesome. From the sounds of it, there's been a much larger emphasis on developing the arts and developing kind of the resources for kids who aren't necessarily on the athletic side and, prefer to, perform Hamlet and Shakespeare. So when do you think that, shift towards, trying to make sure that you had the necessary resources for the arts kind of happened?
Performing arts has been a very important piece of this community for as long as I've lived here, which is 22 years. I mean, I sent my students to the Edna Hill Performing Arts Camp over the summer, and I was always amazed with how much a part of the community community theater is here. It's been a challenge in Oakley because they have not had that type of facility. Arts has always been important in our district. It's just that we went away from it when we were building academies at Freedom, and now we said, well, we need it, and this is the first opportunity to address that need.
So is that a chance to kind of get back to it?
Exactly.
All right. And so you did say how the theater only really opened up, early this year. So I know it's opened up for use. Do you know if they've opened up shows to the public yet? Because I know, like, when it comes to Liberty High School shows, everyone in the community always hears about it and likes to go. I think I almost went to the Hairspray one, actually, but I ended up being busy. So do you know if the Freedom?
Oh, absolutely. I've been to choir concerts at Freedom. I've been to their spring theatrical performance, which was a spinoff of Harry Potter, and I'm forgetting the name right now of what the play was actually called. So they've opened it to the public, to answer your question. But my favorite story with the theater is one day I walked into the choir teacher's classroom. And I said, we need your choir students. This was before it actually had opened up. We need your choir students for a sound check. And he goes, really? Yes, really.
It was the best day of this high school.
And those students, they were so excited. You could just see they were shaking because they got to go in the theater. There was yellow tape across their door for the longest time between their classroom and their classroom opens up into the foyer. And so we went through the yellow tape. They got to go on stage, and they were able to sing on stage for the first time. They christened it, if you will.
Oh my goodness.
The theater, the choral teacher was able to listen to his class in the theater, and he was just overjoyed. And then as I gave the students a tour after that, one of the students was a technical director for the theater program, and she was just over the moon when she saw the tech ledge and so on. It's a really nice facility.
Yeah, all the students were like, today's the day.
There are some bad days and there are some good days, and that was definitely a good day.
That sounds like a really good day. And so one thing that you did mention that I would also like to ask about in terms of the developments of the schools is the renovation happening at Liberty High School.
Yes.
This is always on the forefront of my mind because I can see it from my office. What exactly, has been, is currently being, and will be renovated by the time construction is complete? Kind of a 3-tier question there. So.
This was a challenge for the architects. We knew we needed to renovate the cafeteria, if not get a new cafeteria. We also knew that the way that we welcomed visitors to the school was a little unique. Liberty High School really hasn't had a true administration welcoming area for families since the fire of '63, when the school that was built in 1919 burned down. They replaced the offices with some modular portables, if you will, that sat where the PAC currently is. And that served the school from 64 to 63, 64, all the way until 1990. And then in 1990, when the PAC opened up, they moved the offices to what is now the A wing. So it's always interesting watching parents walk onto campus and where do I go for this den or this den and so on. And now we will have a central administration at Liberty that will mirror the facilities that we have at the other two comprehensive high schools. And then for the multi-purpose room, we were limited in how we used that space because of the way that students queued up for their lunches. So we have changed the servery area to open up to the quad. So students will enter the cafeteria through the quad, and then they will have a choice of either going back out to the quad area, which will be renovated and have more places for students to sit and eat, or they can come into the full area of the multi-purpose room instead of what we had before, which was about half of the usage before. And we have friendlier furniture in there, so it looks a little bit more like a cafe than it does a traditional high school cafeteria. And we're hoping that these renovations give Liberty a more welcoming feel to students and to families. And then the next piece is, once we're completed with this project, we currently have plans in at DSA, and they haven't been approved yet. We are going to tear down what is now the B, C, and D wings and put 16 permanent classrooms on the front, and the classroom building will actually parallel 2nd Street. And so our school will now have a perimeter much like the other schools. So it won't be as open for people from the outside to come onto campus.
So it'll kind of streamline people more towards like the main entrance.
The main entrance. Well, we're going to definitely narrow down the number of entrances. So you'll have Liberty High School that will have a relatively new north part of campus. And I say relatively, that's 1990. which is only a little bit older than Freedom.
Well, in the total age, pretty new.
Right. And we have, and then we're the east side or the back part of the school will be relatively new. And then now we're working on the front side, and then now the front side will be relatively new, and the south side, which is where the shops and arts area are, abuts right to City Hall. And maybe in a few years we can pass another bond and address those facilities, and maybe even the middle of school in their library and Nash Hall areas.
Wow, that's a lot of really great development for the school, though. I'm just imagining, because this happened at my college where they renovated a bunch of stuff after I graduated. I'm imagining those alumni of Liberty High School, the seniors, they're going to come back, be like, wow, you guys have couches now. Back in my day, we had benches, because that's always a fun conversation. So I wasn't working at the press before the pandemic started, so I'm kind of curious about this. Did construction start before or during the pandemic?
It started just before the pandemic. In
fact, so they kind of threw a wrench in things for a hot second.
Actually, it did not, because one of the passes that came with the initial shelter in place was public works projects. And being a school district, we were a public works project. So it was really interesting because where commercial development had stopped, any bond project was able to continue to move forward. And I was initially worried about that, but they had no trouble finding workers for the Liberty Pool. We were working on the pool and the culinary arts at the time, and it did not create a problem.
So when everything is kind of finished, how much do you think these renovations will have cost?
Well, our Measure U bond was for $122 million.
Oh, wow.
The good news is we initially estimated that $122 million was going to cost taxpayers $28 per $100,000 of assessed valuation on their house. But because of the increase in home prices and our conservative estimates, it's actually much lower than that. It's about $25 per 100. So that goes towards the 122. Right now, our estimates, once all the projects are completed, and that's including the auxiliary gym that's currently being completed at Freedom, as well as 12 new classrooms at Heritage, we're looking at $123 million.
Oh, wow. Pretty good investment, but it seems like a really great reward for the amount of money and effort being put into it.
It's the greatest pleasure about all of this is watching students' faces when something new opens up, but also community members that have lived here a long time are really complimentary of how we're spending our money. They really believe that the additions or the renovations are really going in the right areas. So that's been a lot of fun, is to hear the community feedback on our
to kind of know that you're moving in that right direction.
And it's very student centered, and it's about what is best for students. I mean, the new classrooms, we could fill up all of our campuses and parking lots with portables, but right now we have portables at Heritage that are closer to the main office building at Adams Middle School than they are to their own high school. So that we definitely need to add there, so the students' own educational plant is more consolidated as opposed to spread out, and we don't need to spend more time walking to class than to actually being in class.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So I'm going to move on a little bit. You recently tweeted about introducing life skills students to the Culinary Arts Garden at Heritage High School. So my first question is, and I'll be transparent here, I was homeschooled. I didn't go to high school. So life skills is, what is life skills a class or is it an extracurricular program?
No, life skills is a program within our special services department. These are students whose individual educational plans preclude them from receiving a high school diploma. And so it is a special day class for our severely handicapped students. And they do some mainstreaming in different classes. However, they predominantly spend their school days with a teacher in a class with other students that have these cognitive struggles. We're always looking for ways to make them a part of the entire school culture. A number of years ago, Dr. Amaro, who's now an assistant principal at Freedom, brought Unified Sports to our district, and that was a program whereby our life skills students would team up with our mainstream students and play competitive sports against other schools. And they now have a BVAL Unified Sports schedule.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And so what happened with the Culinary Arts Garden as part of the program, and when we were visiting different culinary arts programs, mostly in Sonoma County, we decided we wanted to have a garden, if nothing else, so that students can grow their own herbs that they used for cooking and possibly tomatoes. There's actually grapevines and passion fruit vines along the outside of the garden. And we didn't push the garden idea in the first year of running the program, which was last year, because we didn't have students for the first part. And then this year, walking through there, I noticed that the grapevines needed to be pruned. And I've helped my wife in her garden at her elementary school in Ron Nunn. And I said, how about helping me in my garden? You have a garden? Well, it's not mine. It's the school's. But one day we were working in there and weeding, and I was pruning some of the grapevines. And she said, how come you don't plant any plants in here? I said, well, the teacher really hasn't taken that on. It's a relatively new program. And she was talking, well, what about the life skills students doing it? I said, that's an awesome idea. So I mentioned it to the teacher and to a paraprofessional, and they loved the idea, and as did the chef and the principal. So I got to lead the students on a little field trip yesterday, and we went to Home Depot, and we bought some herbs and some tomatoes and peppers, and we took 5 students to Home Depot, and then we were joined by probably another half a dozen or more in the garden. And so now we have a full garden there for to be used in our culinary program that our life skills students will maintain and take care of.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
It was awesome.
When I was younger, I always knew it was going to be a good day when we went to Home Depot, because you were going to do some type of project. So now they just get to maintain that as part of the life skills program. They get to maintain the garden. They get to maintain the garden,
tend the garden, make sure that the weeds are kept down, look for bugs that might be eating some of the herbs, and so the adults can take care of that. Talk to our gardeners if they're getting too much water or not enough water. Talk to the chef. So the whole idea is to allow our life skills students to interact with the mainstream and to make plans with the help of their teachers to make this garden an active part of the culinary program. So it was funny. Yesterday we got to taste some of the passion fruit that was ripe. So one student got to taste a passion fruit, and he absolutely loved it.
That's so fun. My family used to have a garden, and I remember we would always just be like, all right, it's time to eat it. And my mom would be like, no, you have to wash it. We'd be like, no, right off the stem.
Yeah,
mistakes were made.
That's a bad idea.
It was a very bad idea.
Yeah, anybody that's done U-pick and eaten the fruit right off the tree, they realize right away that that's a bad idea.
Yeah, no. But we learn. But to move on again a little bit. So it was recently shared that Liberty High School is making a change in its curriculum, where instead of offering English 12 to seniors, it will offer either expository reading and writing course or AP English Literature and Composition. It said that this will be official starting in the next school year, and the class of 2023 will be the first to operate under the new curriculum. So why did Liberty High School decide to kind of make this change? And is this really like a change, or have these classes been offered before?
The ERWIC classes, as they're called, the expository writing classes, have been around probably for 6 or 7 years, and they were offered at all of our high schools. The Liberty teachers through their academies really adopted them, and they allow for students to not have to take entrance tests when they go to college if they pass it with a C or higher. They were developed by the California state school system, UCs and CSUs. And what was happening is students were choosing classes based upon whether or not they thought they were going to college. Our English 12 there's nothing wrong with our English 12 program, but sometimes students feel like, well, you take English 12 if you're not going to college, and you take the IRWIC if you are.
Got it.
And so really students were sort of self-sorting themselves based upon their course requests. And so the school decided, no, we're going to have one offering. What offering is it going to be? Is it going to be English 12 or IRWIC? They really like the IRWIC curriculum. So they've taken that choice. What they've done is they've taken a choice away from the students, and their seniors are going to take the IRWIC class as opposed to giving them a choice between the English 12 or the IRWIC, so that all students would get the same curriculum, that students were not self-selecting, self-sorting themselves based upon whether or not they thought they were going to college. So basically it was a way of getting rid of tracking of students.
Okay, so instead of students kind of just being like, oh, I'm just going to go with English 12, I don't want to do the advanced writing course, you're like, no, you can do the advanced writing course.
And really it wasn't an advanced writing course. It was a course that was focused on expository writing in preparation for college.
Okay, so it really taught students how to do the college writing.
Right. There was less literature, a lot more nonfiction, and more focus on writing for college, as opposed to the more general literature and English literature class that was English 12.
So it's really going to prepare all students to be able to be ready for college writing, instead of some of them kind of getting rid of that opportunity.
I think a fair statement is that the school now can have the same expectations for achievement of all their students, as opposed to students not lessening the expectations by what class they take.
Okay, that is a very good way to put it. So are there any updates on COVID and pandemic policies or changes recently that people would want to know about?
Actually, there are. They just released today that we're under new quarantine policies, which mirrors what our initial sick policy was pre-pandemic, which is if you're sick, stay home. That there's no longer the group tracing perspective. It's just, monitor yourself for COVID symptoms, and if you think you might have it, we have the ability to test our students at school if they're worried about having COVID. They've also officially changed the mask or tests for indoor sports, and they've changed the policy for mega events. We used to have to monitor whether or not people have been tested negative or have been vaccinated to go in an indoor type of event of 1,000 or more. We don't have to do that anymore. So there's been some recent changes with the coming of spring. It was interesting that we meet twice monthly with Contra Costa Health Services, and it was interesting. The average number of cases per day was almost identical to the same day 1 year ago. This was last Monday. There was only one case difference in terms of the average number of cases. So the pandemic seems to be marrying itself, over and over again.
Kind of just like cycling through it as more variations happen and stuff. Actually, talking about the cases though, how many cases of COVID are there in the district right now?
Oh, I have not seen the data on our employees. I think I think at the beginning of the week we had 6 students that were home that had tested positive, and 20 that were close contacts and were exposed and symptomatic. So that's a lot less than the 15% of our population that was absent when we returned in January.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious about this. Since it's allergy season, how many people start thinking that they have COVID because they have allergies? And then you're like, you're good. it's allergies. We've tested you.
Actually,
you're fine.
Most of the families have told us this happens every year at this time. It's allergies. They're taking, they're taking their medication for the allergies. They have whatever it is that they've taken. So the families are good at saying this is the usual thing, and we offer. And it's just in case, if you want, do you want to take a test? We have that available for you here. If it doesn't feel like allergies anymore. So we and if somebody wants to talk to one of our nurses, we've increased our nursing staff in the district to accommodate for the pandemic, and a number of other positions as well, testers and so on.
All right. The last thing I want to ask about is something that has been talked about on the podcast before, but it's still pretty relevant as we get further into April, is the Miles for Mayo 5K on April 16th. So for readers who haven't listened to any episode before this, which would be weird if you haven't, so go back and listen to them. But basically, Matthias Rogers was a 16-year-old Liberty High School athlete and student who passed away in a car accident on June 16th in 2021. And so now, almost a year later, the family is hosting a 5K in honor and remembrance of him. So, Eric, Matthias was a student of Liberty High School, and I'm not 100% sure because I was at the vigil and I covered the vigil that happened, but I don't remember the whole thing. But did you speak at the vigil that was hosted last year?
I did not speak. I availed the stadium to the family, and our cross-country coach at the time, Eric Morford, organized the event, and I did talk to Matthias's stepmom a little bit there, and I talked to the dad a little bit and offered the district's condolences for the accident. It's just, those are always, those are really hard times for educators as well as for the entire school community. When you watch people mourn the loss of a young person, and so I think this 5K run is an excellent way to remember him. I mean, and his love. His love was running. My understanding is that he found cross country accidentally and ended up being really good at it, and was just coming into his own as a valuable member of the team, and so this is a great way to honor the memories of him.
Absolutely. So before I end the episode, is there anything else that you would like to say?
The only other thing that I'd like to say is there is a public hearing coming up with the County Office of Education for our new trustee area elections. It'll be the first, Liberty Union High School District has been an at-large election of board members since 1902, and 120 years later, we're moving to trustee areas. And so I believe the public hearing is on April 20th via Zoom with the County Office of Education. So that's the only other big news that's going on, and I know that the city is going through the same thing, and so is Oakley, and a lot of districts are going through the same thing right now after the new census.
So is the Zoom link for that meeting on the district's website?
It's not on that's a great idea. It's not on our district website. It's on the County Office of Contra Costa County Office of Education's website.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
You're very welcome. This was a great experience.
Well, hopefully you'll come back.
Sure.
That's it for today's episode of Clocked In with the Press. I appreciate you taking the time to listen in, and I look forward to speaking with you in future episodes. If you would like to read more news stories of Contra Costa County, you can do so through our website at www.thepress.net or through our Twitter and Instagram at PressClockedIn. Contact us with your thoughts on this episode or any other episode before it. That's all that I have for you today, and I will speak with you all next time. This is Caitlin Gleason, clocking out.